I'm sitting in my car in the Target parking lot, and I can't stop crying. It's 3:15 on a Tuesday afternoon. I came here to buy light bulbs. Just light bulbs. The kitchen fixture has been out for a week, and Linda kept mentioning it, so I finally drove over here to pick some up. But I'm not inside the store. I'm in my car in the parking lot, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles have gone white, and I'm crying so hard I can barely breathe. I'm 60 years old. I haven't cried like this in probably 30 years, and I'm doing it in a Target parking lot because it's the only place I can think of where nobody knows me, where my wife won't walk in, where my kids won't see, where I can finally let it out without having to explain or justify or pretend I'm stronger than I feel. Men aren't supposed to cry. That's what my father taught me. That's what the world taught me. That's what I taught myself over 6 decades of swallowing feelings and clenching my jaw and waiting until I was alone to fall apart. But here's what they don't tell you about always being strong. Eventually, you break. And when you do, it happens in the strangest places. Like a Target parking lot on a Tuesday afternoon when you came here to buy light bulbs. I need to explain how I got here. Not to the parking lot. That's easy. I drove. But how I got to this moment, this breaking point, this place where a 60-year-old man who hasn't cried in decades suddenly can't stop. It started this morning when my son called. Marcus is 32, lives in Seattle, works for some tech company doing something I don't fully understand. He's married to a woman named Amy, who's nice enough, but always seems slightly uncomfortable around Linda and me. Like she's not sure what to do with us. They have a 4-year-old daughter, my granddaughter Emma, who I've seen exactly 7 times in her entire life. Marcus called this morning to tell me they're not coming for Thanksgiving. Again. 3rd year in a row. Amy's family is closer. Emma's in preschool and they don't want to disrupt her routine. Flights are expensive, work is busy. All the usual reasons that add up to the same message. We're not a priority. I said I understood, told him it was fine. We'd miss them, but there's always Christmas. He said maybe Christmas. He'd have to check with Amy. We talked for maybe 5 more minutes about nothing important. Weather in Seattle, Emma's preschool, some project he's working on, and then he had to go. Meeting starting. Talk soon, Dad. Love you. Love you too, I said, but he'd already hung up. I stood in the kitchen with the phone in my hand, and something inside me cracked. Not broke, not yet. Just cracked. A hairline fracture in the foundation I'd been building for 60 years. Linda came in, asked who was on the phone. I told her. Watched her face do this thing it does now when we talk about Marcus. This quick flash of pain that she covers up almost immediately with a smile. Oh. Well, I guess it's just us again. And Emily, I reminded her. Our daughter, at least, still lives close. Still comes to holidays. Still brings the grandkids around a few times a month. Right. And Emily. Linda went back to whatever she was doing. I said I was going to Target for light bulbs. Got in the car. Drove here. Parked. And then it all came flooding out. 30 years of tears I'd been holding back. Because men don't cry. And fathers have to be strong. And showing weakness means you failed somehow. I'm not even sure what I'm crying about anymore. Marcus not coming to Thanksgiving? That's part of it. But it's more than that. It's everything. It's 60 years of feeling things I was never allowed to express. 60 years of shoving emotions down so deep I almost convinced myself they weren't there. 60 years of being the strong one, the provider, the rock that everyone else could lean on, while I slowly crumbled inside. Let me tell you about the first time I cried in secret. I was 8 years old. My dog died. Max, a golden retriever we'd had since I was 4. He got hit by a car in front of our house. I ran inside screaming, and my father came out and looked at Max lying there in the street, and he just picked him up and carried him to the backyard and buried him. Quick and efficient, no ceremony. Then he came inside, put his hand on my shoulder, and said something I've never forgotten. "That's real tough, son, but you're going to be okay. Men don't fall apart when bad things happen. We deal with it, and we move on." I was 8 years old. My best friend had just died, and my father was teaching me that crying about it meant I was weak. That processing grief was something women and children did, but not men. Never men. So I went to my room and I cried silently into my pillow for probably 2 hours. And when I came out for dinner, my face was dry and composed, and my father nodded at me with approval. And I learned the most important lesson of my childhood. You can feel whatever you want, as long as nobody sees it. That lesson shaped everything that came after. I cried the night before I got married, not because I didn't want to marry Linda. I loved her. I was excited about our future. But I was terrified. Terrified I'd fail at being a husband, at being a provider, at being the man she deserved. I was 25 years old, and I felt like a kid pretending to be an adult. And I had no idea if I could pull it off. I waited until Linda went home after the rehearsal dinner. Then I sat in my apartment alone and cried for an hour. Got it all out. And the next day, I stood at that altar with a smile on my face and steady hands. And nobody had any idea that the groom had spent the previous night sobbing into his couch cushions. I cried the night my father died. Heart attack, sudden, he was 63. I was 33, married with 2 kids, supposedly a grown man. We got the call at 2 in the morning. Linda drove me to the hospital, even though we both knew he was already gone. I identified the body, signed the papers, made the arrangements for the funeral, and I didn't cry. Not at the hospital, not at the funeral home, not at the service where I gave the eulogy and talked about what a strong man my father was. How he taught me to be resilient and responsible and never let them see you sweat. I cried 2 weeks later. I was in the garage, cleaning out some boxes, and I found an old baseball glove my father had given me when I was 12. He'd saved up for months to buy it. We didn't have much money back then. The leather was cracked and worn, but it still smelled like the oil he taught me to use to condition it. I sat on the garage floor, holding that glove, and I sobbed. For my father who died too young. For all the conversations we never had. For the fact that he taught me to be strong, but never taught me it was okay to be sad. For the glove and the childhood and the relationship we could have had if either of us had known how to be vulnerable. Linda heard me from inside the house, came out to check on me. I wiped my face fast, said I was fine, just dusty in here. She didn't push it. We'd been married 8 years by then. She learned that I didn't talk about feelings, didn't process emotions out loud, didn't let anyone see me break. I don't know if she learned that from me or she already knew from her own father, her own brothers, the collective understanding that this is just what men do. We suffer silently. We break in private. We cry where nobody can see us, and then we come back inside and pretend nothing happened. The night Marcus was born, I cried. He came 5 weeks early, barely 5 pounds, and they had to put him in the NICU. Linda was exhausted from the delivery, pumped full of painkillers and worry. I told her I was going to get some coffee. Let her rest. I went to the hospital chapel, empty at 3 in the morning, and I prayed to a God I wasn't sure I believed in. Prayed that my son would be okay, that his lungs would be strong enough, that he'd survive those first critical days. And I cried because I'd never been so scared in my entire life. And I couldn't let Linda see that fear because I was supposed to be her rock, her strength, the one who stayed calm when things got scary. Marcus pulled through, spent 2 weeks in the NICU, and came home tiny but healthy. And I never told Linda about that night in the chapel. Never told anyone. It was just one more secret cry in a lifetime of secret cries. I cried the night Emily got in a car accident. She was 16, just gotten her license, and some drunk driver ran a red light and T-boned her. She was fine. Bruised ribs, some cuts from the glass, but alive and okay. The car was totaled, but Emily was fine. Linda and I drove to the hospital together. We sat with Emily while they checked her out, held her hand, told her how lucky she was, drove her home and got her settled in bed. And then Linda went to take a shower, and I walked outside and stood in the backyard in the dark and cried. Cried because my daughter could have died, because that car accident was 6 inches away from being a funeral instead of just a scare. Because I'd spent 16 years protecting her and teaching her to drive safely and warning her about drunk drivers. And none of it mattered when some bit decided to get behind the wheel after too many beers. Cried because I was furious and grateful and terrified all at once. And I didn't know how to express any of those feelings, so I just stood in the dark backyard and let them pour out where nobody could see. When Linda came to find me 20 minutes later, my face was dry. I was just getting some air, I told her. Needed a minute. She hugged me and said she knew. This had been scary for everyone. She had no idea I'd been falling apart. That was the point. The night Marcus told us he was moving to Seattle, I cried. He was 24, fresh out of grad school, had gotten this job offer at a tech company. Great opportunity, he said. Career move. Had to take it. Seattle was 3,000 miles away. I'd see him maybe once or twice a year if I was lucky. He'd been living at home while finishing school, and I'd gotten used to having him around. Morning coffee together, watching games on the weekends. Just the easy presence of my son in my life. Now he was leaving, and I was proud of him. Of course I was proud, but I was also heartbroken in a way I couldn't express. Because men are supposed to want their sons to succeed, to be independent, to go out and conquer the world. We're not supposed to cry about it. We're not supposed to want them to stay. So I congratulated him, helped him pack, drove him to the airport, shook his hand and pulled him into a brief hug and told him I was proud of him. Watched him walk through security and disappear into the crowd. Then I went home and told Linda I had some work to do in the garage. Spent 2 hours out there not doing any actual work, just sitting on an old stool and crying for the son who was leaving, for the relationship we'd had when he was younger that I'd somehow let slip away as he got older, for all the conversations I'd meant to have with him about life and love and what it means to be a man that I'd never gotten around to having. Linda knew, I think. She always knew when I was hiding in the garage crying, but she never said anything, never pushed. Maybe she thought I needed the privacy. Maybe she was doing the same thing, hiding her tears, pretending to be strong, maintaining the facade that we were both handling these transitions with grace. Or maybe she just didn't know what to do with a husband who'd spent 30 years never showing vulnerability. Maybe she'd stopped cried when I realized one day that Marcus and I had drifted so far apart we could barely maintain a conversation beyond surface-level small talk. Cried when the doctor said I had high blood pressure and I needed to reduce stress. And I wanted to laugh, because how do you reduce stress when stress is your natural state of being? When you've been holding everything in for so long, you don't know any other way to exist. I'd wait until Linda's breathing got slow and regular. Then I'd slip out of bed and go to the bathroom or the kitchen, or sometimes just sit on the couch in the dark living room. And I'd cry as quietly as I could, barely making a sound, tears running down my face while I kept my breathing steady so nobody would hear. Sometimes I'd look at myself in the bathroom mirror while I cried, watching this 60-year-old man with gray hair and lines around his eyes, tears streaming down his face, and I'd feel disgusted with myself, pathetic, weak. Everything my father taught me not to be. But I couldn't stop. Once the tears started, they'd come whether I wanted them to or not. All I could control was making sure nobody saw. The night I retired, I cried. Everyone at work threw me this party. Cake, speeches, the whole thing. People said nice things about my 35 years of service, my dedication, how much I'd contributed. I smiled and thanked everyone and gave a little speech about how much I'd enjoyed working there. Then I came home, and Linda had made my favorite dinner, and Emily came over with the grandkids, and we had this nice family evening. And after everyone left and Linda went to bed, I sat in the garage, my crying place, and I sobbed because I was terrified. 35 years of my identity had been tied to that job, and now what was I? Just an old man with too much time and no purpose. Just someone who used to matter, used to be needed, used to have a reason to get up in the morning. I cried because I was already lonely, and retirement had barely started, because I could see my future stretching out ahead of me. Days of nothing, of puttering around the house, of being in Linda's way, of slowly becoming irrelevant to everyone, including myself. And I couldn't tell anyone these fears. Couldn't tell Linda that retirement terrified me. Couldn't tell my kids that I was lost. Couldn't admit that the thing everyone had been congratulating me on felt like the beginning of the end. So I cried in the garage until I couldn't cry anymore, and then I washed my face and went to bed and pretended everything was fine. My whole life has been like this. Feelings so big they threaten to swallow me whole, and nowhere to put them, except in secret places where nobody can see. The garage, the car, the bathroom at 3 in the morning, the backyard in the dark, Target parking lots. I've never told anyone about these cries. Never confessed to Linda that I'm not as strong as I pretend to be. Never let my kids see me break down, because fathers are supposed to be solid, unshakable, the foundation that holds everything else up. But foundations crack. They always do. Eventually. You can only put so much weight on something before it starts to give. There was a moment, about 5 years ago, when I almost broke the pattern. Emily had come over for dinner, and we were sitting on the back deck after Linda went inside to clean up. Just the two of us. Evening light fading, cicadas starting their nightly chorus. Emily was telling me about some problem she was having at work. Her boss was being unreasonable. She felt undervalued. She was thinking about quitting. And I started to tell her about a similar situation I'd faced years ago. About how I'd felt exactly the same way, scared and angry and trapped. About how I'd gone out to the car on my lunch break and cried from the stress of it. How I'd felt like such a failure, such an imposter, barely holding it together. I got halfway through the story and stopped myself, changed the ending, made it about how I'd stood up to my boss, how I'd handled it with confidence, how everything had worked out because I'd stayed strong and professional. Emily nodded, said that was good advice, said she'd try to handle it the same way. And I sat there thinking about what I'd almost done, almost told my daughter the truth, almost showed her that her father was human, was vulnerable, had struggled too, almost gave her permission to be scared and uncertain, because her dad had been those things too and survived them. But I couldn't do it. The words got stuck in my throat. The lifetime habit of hiding was too strong, so I gave her the sanitized version, the version where Dad always had it together, and I watched her carry that impossible standard back into her own life. I think about that moment a lot, how close I came to being honest, how badly I wanted to tell her that it's okay to cry at work, to feel overwhelmed, to not have all the answers. That strength isn't about never breaking. It's about breaking and putting yourself back together and admitting when you need help. But I didn't say any of that. And now it's been 5 years and the moment has passed and I'm still pretending. My father died without ever telling me he was scared or sad or overwhelmed or any of the things I'm sure he must have felt. He maintained that stoic mask right up until the heart attack killed him. And I thought that's what strength looked like. I thought that's what being a man meant. Now I'm sitting in a Target parking lot crying because my son isn't coming to Thanksgiving. And I'm realizing my father didn't die strong. He died alone, emotionally alone, Even though he was married and had kids and grandkids, he died having never really been known by anyone, because he never let anyone see who he actually was underneath the performance. And I'm heading in the exact same direction. Emily knows me better, but only because she's more persistent. She's asked me over the years if I'm okay, if I'm happy, if there's something I want to talk about. And every time, I've said I'm fine. Everything's fine, because that's what I do. That's who I've been for 60 years. Linda has been married to me for 35 years, and I don't know if she actually knows me. We've built a life together, raised kids together, weathered all the normal storms of a long marriage, but I've never told her about the secret cries. Never been fully honest about my fears and insecurities and the constant anxiety that I'm not good enough, not strong enough, not enough. She's sleeping next to a stranger who happens to be her husband, and that's my fault. I did that. I chose that every time I hid my tears, every time I swallowed my feelings, every time I pretended to be okay when I wasn't. I was building a wall between us that's now so high and so thick. I don't know how to get around it. There was a night, maybe 10 years ago, when she almost caught me. I thought she was asleep. Her breathing was deep and steady. She hadn't moved in over an hour. So I got up and went to the bathroom, closed the door, ran water in the sink to cover the sound, and let myself cry. I don't even remember what it was about anymore. Work stress, probably. Or maybe it was around the time Marcus had stopped calling regularly. When I first started to realize I was losing him, whatever it was, I was in that bathroom crying as quietly as I could. And suddenly there was a soft knock on the door. "Walter, you okay?" My heart stopped. I splashed water on my face, cleared my throat. "Yeah, fine. Just had some heartburn. Be out in a minute." There was a pause, a long pause where I could feel her standing on the other side of that door, deciding whether to push or let it go. "Okay," she finally said. "There's Tums in the medicine cabinet if you need them." I heard her footsteps going back to the bedroom. I looked at myself in the mirror. Red eyes, wet face, the truth written all over me. And I hated myself. Hated that I was lying to her. Hated that I was crying about things I couldn't even name. Hated that I couldn't just open that door and tell her what was really wrong. I stayed in there for another 20 minutes, waiting for my face to return to normal. When I finally came back to bed, Linda was lying on her side, facing away from me. I couldn't tell if she was asleep or just pretending. We never talked about that night, never acknowledged it, just added it to the pile of things we don't discuss, don't address, don't deal with. The pile that's gotten so big over the years, it's practically a third presence in our Maria. She's sleeping next to a stranger who happens to be her husband. And that's my fault. I did that. I chose that. Every time I hid my tears, every time I swallowed my feelings, pretended to be okay when I wasn't. I was building a wall between us that's now so high and so thick I don't know how to get around it. The thing about crying in secret is that it's lonely, incredibly lonely. You're having this profound emotional experience, and nobody knows. Nobody can comfort you, or tell you it's going to be okay, or just sit with you in your pain. You're completely alone, with feelings too big for one person to hold. And then you have to pull yourself together, and go back inside and pretend it never happened. Pretend you're fine. Pretend you're strong. I'm so tired of pretending. I'm 60 years old, and I don't want to die like my father did. I don't want to reach the end of my life, having never been fully known by anyone, having never told my kids that I cry, that I hurt, that I'm not made of stone. But I don't know how to start. How do you dismantle a performance you've been giving for 60 years? How do you tell people you've been lying to them about who you are, not with your words, but with your silence? How do you tell your son that you cried the night he was born? and the night he left for Seattle, and every time he cancels a visit. How do you tell your daughter that you're proud of her, but also terrified you've somehow failed her by never modeling what healthy emotional expression looks like? How do you tell your wife of 35 years that you've spent probably 1,000 nights crying where she couldn't hear you because you thought that's what she needed you to be? I don't have answers to these questions. I'm sitting in a Target parking lot, my face probably red and swollen. And I don't have any answers, just a bone-deep exhaustion from carrying this weight for so long. A woman walks past my car with a shopping cart full of groceries. She glances at me, sees me crying, quickly looks away. I wonder what she thinks. Probably assumes I got bad news. Someone died, medical diagnosis, divorce papers, something dramatic enough to justify a 60-year-old man crying in public. She doesn't know it's just Thanksgiving, just another year of my son not coming home, just one more small disappointment in a lifetime of small disappointments that add up to this crushing realization that I'm alone, even in a marriage, even with kids, even with grandkids, because I've spent my whole life making sure nobody could see the real me. My phone buzzes. Text from Linda. Did you get lost at Target? I wipe my face with my sleeve. Look at myself in the rearview mirror. Eyes red, face blotchy. Definitely obvious I've been crying. I can't go home like this. Can't walk in the door and have Linda see me and ask questions I don't know how to answer. So I text back. They didn't have the right kind of bulbs. Going to try Home Depot. Another lie, another evasion, another brick in the wall I've been building for 60 years. I start the car, drive out of the Target parking lot, but I don't go to Home Depot. I drive around for an hour, aimless, waiting for my face to return to normal, waiting to transform back into the version of Walter that everyone knows, calm, composed, steady, the version that never cries where anyone can see. I think about my granddaughter Emma, 4 years old, living in Seattle, barely knows me. What kind of grandfather am I to her? The distant man who shows up on video calls twice a month? The one who sends presents on her birthday but isn't there to watch her open them? What is she learning from me? What lessons am I teaching through my absence, my emotional unavailability, my inability to be vulnerable? I think about my grandson, Tommy, Emily's son, who's 6. He cried last month when his goldfish died. Emily told me about it, said he was devastated, sobbed for an hour. She asked if he was old enough for another pet or if they should wait. I told her to comfort him, let him feel his feelings, maybe get him another goldfish when he was ready. Sound advice. Advice I've never followed in my own life. Do as I say, not as I do. Tommy is 6, and he's already more emotionally healthy than I am at 60. Because Emily is raising him differently than I was raised. She's teaching him it's okay to be sad, okay to cry, okay to feel things deeply and express them openly. I was there a few weeks ago when Tommy fell off his bike and scraped his knee pretty badly. He started crying, not just from the pain, but from the shock and fear of it. And I watched Emily scoop him up and hold him and say, "It's okay to cry, buddy. That was scary, and it hurts. Let it out." My immediate instinct was to tell him to toughen up, to say what my father would have said. "You're all right. Shake it off. Big boys don't cry over scraped knees." But I didn't say anything. I just watched Emily comfort him, validate his feelings, let him cry until he was ready to stop. And then she cleaned the scrape and put a Band-Aid on it, and Tommy went right back to playing, completely fine, not traumatized or damaged by having been allowed to express his pain. It was such a small moment, such an ordinary parent-child interaction, but it shook something loose in me, made me realize how different my childhood could have been if someone had told me it was okay to feel things. How different my whole life could have been. After Emily and Tommy left that day, I went out to the garage and cried. Not about anything specific. Just cried for the little boy I was who never got that permission. For the man I became who still doesn't know how to ask for it. She's breaking the cycle I'd been trapped in my whole life, and I'm proud of her for that. But I'm also grieving for myself, grieving for the little boy I was who buried Max in the backyard and cried alone in his room, grieving for all the years I spent believing that strength meant suffering in silence. The sun is starting to set. I've been driving around for almost 2 hours. Linda has probably tried calling. I should go home. Should pick up those light bulbs. Should walk back into my house and my life and my performance. But I sit in the car for another 10 minutes, parked in a random neighborhood I don't recognize, and I let myself cry one more time. Just a few more minutes of being honest, of not. Linda is in the kitchen when I walk in. She looks up from her book, smiles. Find them? I hold up the package. Fine ye. You were gone a long time. Yeah. Traffic. She nods, goes back to her book, and I go to the kitchen, climb on the step stool, change the light bulb, fix the thing that was broken, at least the thing I can fix, the thing that's simple and has a solution. The light comes on, bright and steady and reliable, just like I'm supposed to be. That night, I lie in bed next to Linda. She falls asleep within minutes, her breathing slow and even. And I lie there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, feeling the tears start to come again. But I don't let them. I push them down, swallow them, force myself to be still and quiet and strong. 'Cause that's what I do. That's who I am. That's who I've always been. The man who cries where nobody can see. The father who stayed strong so his kids would never think he was weak. Even though I'm starting to understand that this version of strength is actually weakness, that hiding is cowardice, that every tear I cry in secret is another moment of connection I'm denying the people I love. But knowing and changing are different things. So I lie there in the dark next to my wife who doesn't know me, in the house where I've hidden 1,000 cries, and I don't let myself break. Not here. Not now. Not where anyone might see. Maybe tomorrow I'll cry in the garage, or in the car, or in another Target parking lot. But tonight I'm strong. Tonight I'm everything I'm supposed to be, even if it's killing me.